Have you ever walked into a room and felt invisible? Judged not by your actions or words, but by the way you looked or what you wore. Now imagine this, a man with years of wisdom in his eyes, dressed humbly, stepping into a world where status is everything. He's there for a simple reason, to fulfill a heartfelt promise. But instead of respect, he's met with laughter, side glances and whispers. What would you do if that man was you? This isn't just a story about humiliation. It's about courage, kindness, and a lesson that turned an entire business on its head. Stay with us, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about appearances, respect, and the power of standing up for what's right. This is a story that will inspire you, move you, and remind you kindness and humility always have the last word. Meet Mr. Thomas, a retired schoolteacher, with a heart full of wisdom and a life shaped by humility. For over 40 years, he spent his days guiding young minds, teaching them not only the lessons in their textbooks, but also the values of kindness, respect, and integrity. Mr. Thomas isn't a man of wealth or luxury. He prefers simplicity, living in a modest home, wearing clothes that show their age, but are always neat and clean. He's the kind of man who values people for who they are, not what they have. But today is special. Today, he's stepping out with a purpose close to his heart. His grandson, Chris, has just graduated college, the first in their family to achieve this milestone. For Mr. Thomas, it's not just a moment of pride. It's a reason to celebrate in a way Chris will never forget. Over the years, Mr. Thomas set aside a little from his small pension, carefully saving for this moment. His plan to buy Chris a car, not a flashy one, not the latest model, but something reliable, something that could carry Chris into his future. He knows he doesn't look like the typical car buyer. His shoes are worn, his shirt has a few wrinkles, and his demeanor is quiet. But behind his modest appearance is a man with a purpose. A man who believes that love and effort can create memories that last a lifetime. With a heart full of hope, he walks into the dealership. He's polite, reserved, and eager to find the perfect car. Little does he know, the way he's treated here will test everything. He's believed about kindness and respect. What happens next will teach everyone involved a lesson they'll never forget. The dealership was a picture of sophistication. Gleaming cars lined the pristine showroom floor, their metallic finishes reflecting the bright, polished lights above. The air smelled of luxury, new leather, fresh coffee, and the faint scent of expensive cologne. From the well-dressed customers browsing the lot, salespeople clad in sharp suits moved with purpose, their polished shoes clicking against the tiles. And then there was Mr. Thomas. He entered quietly, his steps measured and his expression hopeful. His modest attire, a wrinkled shirt tucked into faded slacks and shoes that had seen better days, made him stand out in a place where appearances often dictated first impressions. He paused for a moment, taking in the surroundings, before heading toward the reception desk. But instead of the warm greeting he expected, there was hesitation. A quick glance from the receptionist, followed by a forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Moments later, a salesman approached, tall, confident, and oozing arrogance. His name tag read Evan, with a practiced charm. He greeted the customers behind Mr. Thomas first, barely acknowledging the elderly man's presence. When Evan finally turned to Mr. Thomas, his smile shifted, less genuine, more condescending. "Are you sure you're in the right place, sir?" he asked, his tone laced with disbelief. Mr. Thomas, unfazed by the remark, responded calmly, "Yes, I'm looking for a car for my grandson. He just graduated and I want to get him something reliable." Evan chuckled, his gaze drifting to Mr. Thomas's shoes, then back up. "Well, the cars here might be a little out of your budget, but feel free to look around." Without waiting for a reply, he turned his attention to another customer, leaving Mr. Thomas standing there bewildered but composed. Nearby, a group of staff whispered among themselves, their laughter carrying across the showroom. One even gestured toward Mr. Thomas, making an offhand remark that drew more snickers. But not everyone joined in. Sarah, a junior employee who had been quietly observing, felt a pang of discomfort. While others dismissed Mr. Thomas as unimportant, she saw something different, something genuine in his demeanor. She approached him with a warm smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you with anything?" she asked, her voice kind and sincere. Mr. Thomas's face lit up slightly. "Thank you," he said softly. "I'm looking for a car for my grandson. He's worked so hard and I want to surprise him." Sarah nodded, genuinely interested. "That's such a thoughtful gift. Why don't I get you a coffee while we discuss what you're looking for?" As she led him to a seating area, the contrast between her treatment of Mr. Thomas and that of her colleagues couldn't have been clearer. Sarah's respect and kindness stood out in a room where superficial judgments seemed to dominate. Little did anyone know, this encounter was about to set the stage for a lesson that no one in the dealership would ever forget. Mr. Thomas left the dealership with quiet steps. His head held high, but a heavy weight lingered on his heart. As the automatic doors slid shut behind him, he couldn't help but glance back one last time. The laughter, the sneers, and the dismissive tone of the salesman replayed in his mind. It wasn't the first time he'd experienced such judgment, but somehow this time it stung a little deeper. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mr. Thomas sat by his small wooden desk at home, staring at a photograph of his grandson, a bright young man in his cap and gown, his face lit with pride and hope. The thought of the hard work his grandson had poured into earning that degree filled Mr. Thomas with immense joy. But the memory of that afternoon at the dealership dimmed it just a little. He leaned back in his chair, letting out a long sigh. He wasn't angry, but the humiliation lingered, clinging to him like a shadow. It wasn't about the car or even the way he was treated. It was the principle, how quickly people judge by appearance, how easily kindness is overlooked in the rush to impress others. As the hours passed, Mr. Thomas found himself reflecting on his own journey. Few people knew his full story, how he'd started as a teacher in a small town, saving every penny to support his family, how he'd taken a leap of faith and started a small tutoring business from his kitchen table, slowly growing it into a successful education company that had touched thousands of lives. The company thrived not because of flashy advertisements or connections, but because of his unwavering belief in hard work, humility, and doing right by others. He'd built a comfortable life for himself, but he never felt the need to flaunt it. That was never his style. But tonight, as he sat in quiet contemplation, something shifted. He wasn't thinking about revenge. No, that wasn't who he was. Instead, he thought about Sarah, the young woman at the dealership who had treated him with respect and kindness when no one else did. And he thought about Evan, the arrogant salesman, and the other staff who had laughed at him. He realized this wasn't just about him. This was an opportunity to teach a lesson, one about humility, kindness, and the value of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their appearance. With a renewed sense of purpose, Mr. Thomas pulled out a blank sheet of paper and began to write. His plan wasn't to embarrass or shame anyone, but to create a moment of reflection, a chance for growth. As he penned his thoughts, the lines on his face softened and a small smile formed. By the time he put his pen down, he knew exactly what he would do. The wheels were in motion, and while no one at the dealership could have anticipated it, the events of the next day would leave an impression they would carry for the rest of their lives. Sometimes, the simplest actions have the power to change everything. And Mr. Thomas was about to remind everyone at the dealership that kindness and humility are worth far more than the price tag of any car on that showroom floor. The next morning, the dealership buzzed with its usual energy, engines revving, customers negotiating, and employees attending to their tasks. The staff, including Evan, the arrogant salesman, were oblivious to the surprise that awaited them. At exactly 9:30 a.m., a sleek black car with tinted windows pulled up outside the dealership. Its arrival turned a few heads, including Evan's, who stood near the entrance. His curiosity was piqued as a sharply dressed chauffeur stepped out and opened the back door. Out stepped Mr. Thomas, dressed in a tailored suit and exuding a quiet confidence. His demeanor was calm, yet there was an unmistakable air of authority about him. He walked toward the dealership with steady steps, his posture upright, his expression unreadable. Evan's smirk quickly faded, replaced by confusion and a flicker of nervousness. He hesitated, unsure whether to greet the man he had dismissed so easily just a day before. Sarah, ever warm and professional, greeted Mr. Thomas with a smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I assist you today?" "Me," she asked, unaware of the unfolding drama. Mr. Thomas nodded, his voice calm and steady. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll need everyone's attention in a moment." The staff exchanged puzzled glances as the manager was summoned. Within minutes, all employees gathered near the showroom floor, their faces a mixture of curiosity and unease. Evan lingered at the back, fidgeting with his tie, his confidence from the previous day nowhere to be seen. Mr. Thomas began to speak, his tone even but firm. "Good morning, everyone. Some of you may remember me from yesterday. I was here to inquire about a car for my grandson. My experience was enlightening, to say the least." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The room fell silent. Sarah looked puzzled, while Evan's face turned pale. "After some thought, I decided to take action," Mr. Thomas continued. His gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on Evan before moving on. "As of this morning, I am the new owner of this dealership." Gasps filled the air. Shock rippled through the crowd like a wave. Evan's jaw dropped, his face a mix of disbelief and panic. Sarah's eyes widened, and she looked at Mr. Thomas with a blend of admiration and surprise. Mr. Thomas raised a hand to quiet the murmurs. "Let me be clear," he said. "This isn't about revenge. It's about setting a new standard. A standard where respect and kindness are non-negotiable. Starting today, things are going to change around here." He turned his attention to Sarah. "Sarah, your kindness and professionalism didn't go unnoticed. People like you are the backbone of any business. I want to personally thank you for the way you treated me yesterday." Her face flushed with gratitude as she nodded. Then Mr. Thomas addressed the rest of the staff. "To those of you who laughed or turned your back on me, I hope this serves as a reminder. Judging someone based on their appearance or assuming their worth is never the right way. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity." The room was silent, the weight of his words settling heavily. Some employees looked down, unable to meet his gaze, while others nodded in agreement, reflecting on their behavior. Evan, now visibly uncomfortable, shifted on his feet. Mr. Thomas looked directly at him and said, "I'm not here to humiliate anyone, but I do hope this experience teaches you something valuable, something that will serve you far beyond this showroom." As the meeting concluded, Mr. Thomas's message was clear. Respect, humility, and kindness would now be the foundation of the dealership's culture. For some, it was a wake-up call. For others, like Sarah, it was a moment of recognition and encouragement. And as Mr. Thomas walked away, he left behind more than just a new owner's announcement. He left a lesson that would echo in the hearts of everyone in that room, a reminder that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or cars, but in the way we treat one another. In the days that followed his announcement, Mr. Thomas wasted no time in turning his vision into reality. The transformation of the dealership was not just about new ownership, it was about rebuilding its heart and soul. One by one, Mr. Thomas called each employee into his office. His approach was calm but firm, his words measured and purposeful. To those who had been dismissive or rude, he gave an option: reflect and commit to change, or seek opportunities elsewhere. This isn't a punishment, but he explained to one employee who had treated customers with arrogance. It's an opportunity for growth. But if you choose to stay, you must embrace the principles this dealership will now stand for: respect, humility, and service. Some employees left, unwilling to adapt to the new standards. But for those who chose to stay, it was a wake-up call. They realized their behavior was not just a reflection of themselves, but of the business they represented. Then came the moment many had anticipated, the recognition of Sarah. One afternoon, Mr. Thomas called the entire team together for a meeting. As I've spent time observing this dealership, one person's actions have stood out. He began, looking directly at Sarah. In a world where kindness and professionalism often go unnoticed, you have set an example for all of us. He paused, letting his words sink in, then continued. Effective immediately, Sarah will be promoted to the position of Customer Relations Manager. Her role will be crucial in shaping the culture of this dealership. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as the room erupted into applause. It was a moment of validation, not just for her, but for everyone who believed that good deeds eventually bear fruit. But Mr. Thomas wasn't done. He knew that a single promotion wouldn't be enough to change the culture. He introduced a series of new policies designed to ensure every customer felt valued and respected. Training sessions were scheduled, focusing on humility, empathy, and service excellence. Employees were taught to listen more, judge less, and approach every interaction with genuine care. These sessions weren't just about selling cars. They were about building trust and lasting relationships. When people walk through those doors, Mr. Thomas explained during one session, they shouldn't just see a dealership. They should feel they've entered a place where they're respected, heard and valued. Over the weeks, the changes began to take root. The atmosphere in the dealership shifted. Smiles became genuine. Conversations with customers grew longer and warmer. Even those who had initially resisted the changes found themselves inspired by the new environment. And Mr. Thomas didn't stop with his employees. He made a point to meet customers personally, listening to their feedback and sharing his vision for the dealership. We're not just selling cars, he would tell them. We're creating experiences. And every experience should leave you feeling better than when you came in. The transformation wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But slowly and surely, the dealership became a place where people wanted to be, both employees and customers alike. It became a place built on the values Mr. Thomas had always held dear: integrity, kindness, and the simple but profound act of treating others with respect. Months passed, and the transformation of the dealership was nothing short of remarkable. What was once a place plagued by indifference and arrogance had become a thriving hub of respect and connection. The changes were evident in every corner. Customer reviews began pouring in, each one more glowing than the last. People shared stories of how they were greeted with genuine smiles, how employees went above and beyond to meet their needs. One customer wrote, "This dealership is different. They don't just sell cars, they care about people." The impact wasn't just external. Inside the dealership, the employees worked with a newfound sense of purpose. They no longer viewed their roles as merely jobs, but as opportunities to make a difference. The staff meetings, once tense and hurried, were now collaborative and filled with ideas on how to serve customers better. Sarah, in her new managerial role, became a beacon of inspiration. Her kindness and professionalism were no longer just traits. They were the standard by which others measured themselves. Employees often turned to her for guidance, and she led with empathy and clarity. And then there was Mr. Thomas. Every morning, he walked through the dealership, greeting each employee by name, asking about their families, and listening to their suggestions. He had become more than just the owner. He was a mentor, a leader, and a constant reminder of what the dealership stood for. Reflecting on the journey, Mr. Thomas often thought back to the day he first walked through the doors of the dealership as a customer. What began as an act of humiliation had become the catalyst for something much greater. Standing in his office, overlooking the bustling showroom floor, he often spoke to himself, almost as if reminding his heart of a truth he'd always believed. "Success isn't just about what you earn," he would say softly. "It's about the difference you make in the lives of others. It's about leaving things better than you found them." The dealership wasn't just a business anymore. It was a testament to the power of humility, the impact of kindness, and the transformative potential of leadership rooted in integrity. Customers noticed it, employees felt it, and Mr. Thomas lived it. As the dealership thrived, its story began to spread beyond the local community. People came not just to buy cars, but to experience what a place built on respect and genuine care could feel like. It became an example of what was possible when people were valued above. Profit and compassion guided every decision. And so what started as a single moment of humiliation had turned into a legacy of transformation. A legacy that reminded everyone who stepped through those doors that respect, humility, and kindness aren't just good business practices. They're the foundation of a life well lived. As we come to the end of this story, let's take a moment to reflect on what it truly means to make an impact. The dealership's transformation wasn't just about policies or profits. It was a testament to the power of simple yet profound principles: respect, kindness, and humility. It taught us that how we treat people defines not just them, but also us. One of the most important lessons from this journey is to never judge someone by their appearance. Mr. Thomas walked into that dealership like any other customer, but the way he was treated revealed far more about the staff than it did about him. A simple act of respect could have changed everything that day. Another lesson is the incredible power of kindness. Sarah's decision to treat Mr. Thomas with dignity, even when it wasn't required or expected, didn't just leave an impression, it changed her life. Her compassion became the spark for a revolution that touched everyone around her. And finally, humility. For those who embraced it, the experience became an opportunity to grow and thrive. For those who didn't, it served as a reminder that arrogance has no place in genuine success. This story isn't just about a business or its transformation, it's about life. It's a reminder that our actions, no matter how small, have the power to ripple outward, shaping the world in ways we might never see. So, the next time you meet someone, whether it's a stranger, a customer, or a colleague, remember this story. Treat them with respect, not because of who they might be, but because of who you are. You never know the doors your kindness could open or the lives it might touch. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, take a moment to share it. Let's spread the message of kindness and humility far and wide. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring content that reminds us of the good we're all capable of creating. This is not just a story, it's a call to action. Together, let's choose respect. Let's choose kindness. Let's choose to make the world a little brighter, one person at a time. Thank you for watching. And remember, the difference you make today could become someone's inspiration tomorrow.